Hi guys, I'm Niiners, and today I'm showing you an up-to-date Axe PvP guide. For this video, make sure you are comfortable with basic 1.9 PvP mechanics and 1 to 5 SWAT hotkeys. Let's get started. In every game, good aim and good movement are required to be a solid player. It's impossible to play comfortably if you don't dominate these mechanics. They're not difficult to develop though, it's all about habit, muscle memory, and game sense. In order to get a good aim, get comfortable with your mouse sensitivity, you can change it to your liking and train it in-game. Movement is all about muscle memory and game sense. The more you play, the better you know what strafe or move to do in an exact situation. Once you dominate these mechanics, your versatility spikes up and you become way more dominant. Now, I will show you the metas and how to apply them in-game. In Axe PvP, P-crits are used almost as a passive-aggressive strat, taking advantage of getting hit to deal big damage. For those who don't know how these work, it's basically hitting back when you get knocked back, dealing a crit if performed and timed correctly. This meaning, anytime you get hit might be a good time to perform this technique. But you can often get caught in P-crit chains, or constant P-crit trades, so to avoid getting P-crit, you can either strafe out or backstab and back off. Stuns are the most effective way to disable a shield. They can be performed by clicking extremely fast while disabling a shield, knocking your opponent very high and restraining their movement for a short amount of time. This technique works better if you S-up or side strafe, but you should always do this in limit reach. When performed correctly, it can set up into an ideal hit position. To defend this technique, you should always look down to the legs of your opponent while shielding and spam click, and try to follow your opponent with your aim. This technique is called auto-hitting. It works really well. Strafing is very important if you want to get better. If you move and space out a lot, you become a difficult target. You can combine strafes with weak hits, an underrated strat that can adjust your opponent's position into a perfect hit setup. Another underrated strategy is fake out baiting, consisting in moving back and looking back from your opponent but quickly look back and hit. Backstabs can also be effective. Jumping and critting the back of your opponent can be very unexpected and effective, and it surely is very difficult to predict and defend. But it's possible. To lock it, you should track your opponent and press S plus A or D depending on which direction your opponent is going to. A landed crossbow shot is a guaranteed 1.5 hearts of damage, and should be used mainly to break a combo, stop opponents when they are rushing you, or to simply deal big range damage. Bows can work really well to apply pressure from far away, dealing little damage, yet it's annoying and really hard to defend. But if you master crossbow reloading timing and its aim, you can pretty much dominate any ranged scenario. To use the sword, you have to break their shield first. One thing you must do to make sure that the sword is effective is that you have to make sure that when you break their shield, you are close to them. After that, hotkey to your sword and stop crit spamming. If you want this to be more effective, you should always strike to the sides while you're critting. If you get caught in one of these combos, one of the ways to get out is by P-critting. Another way to get out of these combos is by W tapping, which is also very effective. Now, me and a few other players will go over a few tips and tricks. Something that's very important is to manage your reach. This is called spacing, knowing how far you are and how to distance yourself from other players and what moves or strafes or fake outs to do in a certain position. A good way to get started with spacing is by playing patient. After a few hits, you just back off. By doing this a lot, your reach perception will get way better. One move that I do a lot that can help you with this is SDWA and then you hit. I call this technique the hook, and it also works very well with crits. Another technique I use a lot is called shield boosting, and it's taking advantage of stuns to hit or P-crit your opponent. Another very good strat is to just go to the back of your opponent and just hit, not even crit. This technique is called the back hit. This is very confusing and it's very effective. Another very important tip is to be unpredictable when you play. This applies to any type of PvP. The more unpredictable you are, the more you are to follow and to learn and to counter. But first, find out which techniques work the best for you and try to use them, but alternate between them so it's very difficult to follow. If you want to be a dominant player, you should always deal as much damage no matter where you are. This meaning, if you are from far away, you should use the bow and the crossbow, but if you are close, you always look for sword and axes. This is unless you want to finish your combo, or if you want to end the peak grid chain, then you can always use the crossbow. My last tip is, if you want to get good, be patient, play patiently, and take your time to learn. Focus on yourself, don't be annoying, and have fun.
Here are some personal axe PvP tips. If you have your crossbow loaded, you can hotkey to it and shoot it immediately after disabling your opponent's shield. Even if you get auto hit, the damage from the crossbow will make up for it, and there's even a chance that your arrow becomes a critical arrow and deals as much as 3 hearts of damage. Whenever disabling your opponent's shield, make sure that they are not in the air, because then they will be able to land a critical hit on you. To get the most out of blocking a backstab, I try to jump at the same time as my enemy jumps. This way, when I auto hit through their backstab, I land a critical hit. I usually try to get the most out of my arrows, so I use the crossbow a lot. However, if I am dueling someone who uses the sword a lot, I try to save my crossbow shot for when I am in a sword combo.
Yo, this is Doly here, and I'm here to talk with you about spacing and shield timings. I'm gonna quickly go through what it is you want to know about it, and then at the end we're gonna take a look at a clip in which I utilize both perfectly. Make sure you do not block any spam hits from your opponent. You only want to bring your shield up when they're going to hit you with a fully charged hit. Otherwise, you're wasting a 100% block on something that wouldn't even do 1 heart's worth of damage to you. When talking about good spacing, this is the distance you want to keep. Enough space so your opponent can't jump from where they are and crit you, but still close enough for you to hit them if they make a mistake. So your goal is to try and make them believe they can reach you. Then you move in and hit them. Be aware that they might bring their shield up in time to counter you though. Also, if you ever see your opponent swing and miss, immediately move in and hit them. If you're fast enough, you'll be able to hit them with a fully charged hit, and they'll only hit you back with a 75% charged hit. And that's because the axe has a longer cooldown. Alright, so now that I've explained all of it, we're gonna take a look at it used in a high level axe match. Alright, so as you can see, I quick shield the arrows after the first exchange, and then I get a quick backstab, and then we trade a bit more. I bait him into jumping here, so I get 2 hits for 1. I bait him again, get a free hit. I block his peak crit, and then I loop around and I finish him off. Alright, let's take a look at it again, but in slow motion. So after the first trade of hits, I block his 2 arrows. And then after 1 hit again, I get a quick backstab out on the side. And here I mess up a little bit, he gets my shield and a good peak crit. Alright, so right here I bait him into jumping by S-tapping, and then I get 2 hits for 1. And then right here I bait him again, I get a crit, and then I block his peak crit and use that knockback to get my own peak crit. And then I loop around and finish him off. And that's how you can turn the tide with good spacing and shield timings.
Yo, it's Womp, and I'm going to be telling you 2 tips to help me get better at axe. The first tip is what I like to call a reverse strafe, where you strafe in the opposite direction of where you're looking at. As you can see, I look to the right while strafing left, which throws off his aim, allowing me to get a free hit. I continue to strafe in the opposite direction of where I'm looking, which allows me to get this clean shield disable, which wins me the game. Here's another clip of me doing the reverse strafe. The pros of this technique is that it is highly effective and very confusing for your opponents. The cons of this technique is that sometimes it's hard to space since you're not directly paying attention to the amount of blocks in front of you between you and your opponent. Otherwise, this strafe is broken and I abuse it heavily. The second tip is a lot simpler but undoubtedly more useful. I call it the instant crossbow. This involves switching your offhand to a crossbow, disabling your opponent's shield while shooting the crossbow at the same time. Let me demonstrate in some of these clips. Besides the fact that this technique looks really cool, it's extremely useful for those intense situations where you and your opponent are both 1 HP. The pros of this trick is that it is extremely useful for situations where you and your opponent are both 1 hit, and it looks cool. The only con to this trick is that it takes some time to get used to hotkeying that fast. Other than that, this is basically one of the most overpowered ways to win those close fights. And that's about it. These were 2 tricks that helped me become a better player.
Playing and hating. I'm currently a top 5 axe PvPer and have been in the ranks of top axe for a while. I'm going to be discussing the bow and the axe kit and its usefulness, and also a personal trick of mine that takes use of the bow. The bow is, in my opinion, the most underrated weapon in axe PvP. It reloads faster than the crossbow and has very similar damage output to the crossbow. Preferably when you're using the bow in axe PvP, you want to be out of range from your opponent. Otherwise, they will get an axe or sword hit on you. Additionally, you want to strafe after you shoot your bow so they fire where you were and not where you are. Be sure to fully charge your bow for the maximum damage output. One of the tricks I use is called the bow trick. The bow trick is when you stun, crossbow, bow, and then sword main. It's quite complicated, but it pays off when it works. And don't try it against laggy players or this ends up happening.
Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. See you guys.